Hello, and welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence.
And this is Mark Florence.
And today we're talking about the movie Fallen. This is a Denzel Washington movie from 1998, and Mark has never seen it. Surprise, surprise.
Not only have I never seen it, I'm not even sure I've ever heard of it.
Wow, okay. Well, it wasn't highly regarded, apparently. It was only 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. It had a budget of $46 million. It made $25 million at the box office. I wrote those statistics down incorrectly the first time, and Mark corrected me, and he's like, wow, this bombed. And I was like, no, it made like $20 million or something. And he's like, no, your statistics are wrong.
Well, I was just happened to look it up, and I said that, and then you said the other way. But, sometimes you can't believe everything you hear on Horror Rewind. So you better do your own fact checking.
Oh, boy. I guess, yeah, that's true. Now, this movie has this really cool premise. And I know it's not popular with critics, but I think this is a solid movie. This premise is that this guy, this convicted serial killer, he is actually a Azazel or Azazel. How do you pronounce it? Do you remember?
I think it was Azazel. I could be wrong, though.
Azazel. Yeah, fact check it. That he is able to, his soul, he's a demon, his soul can leave his body for one breath or 500 cubits worth of time. Cubit is the length from your elbow to the tips of your fingers, biblical, and he speaks Aramaic. And he's able to, when he gets put to death by the state, and Denzel was the cop who caught him, he is able to pass his soul onto, first of all, the guard, and then just through touch. It's this simple act of touch. He can pass his soul and his essence, his being, onto anybody. And I think that's a pretty cool concept, because then he's going to F with Denzel.
It's a cool concept. My only question would be, so this guy's in prison on death row for, I don't know, probably years and years and years. He never touched somebody or somehow got the spirit out of him, or what?
I don't know about that, but I know he wanted to pass it to Denzel. So maybe he was waiting for this moment, but remember, he touched his hand and said the words, and he wasn't able to pass it on to him for some reason. And so then he took his time just to mess with him. But also, P.S., he's been around since the dawn of man. And so a few years on death row, that's nothing.
Agreed. Yeah. It's kind of like a vampire.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Demons apparently are like vampires. They can, live forever. Now, this isn't totally a spoiler, but it's a little bit of a spoiler. For the new season of Twilight Zone, there is an episode that is similar to this, where somebody can pass their mind and being onto a person just by making eye contact. And that works out even better, because they just have to get someone's attention and make eye contact with them, so they could be across the street. But this demon requires touch. Not too much though. And the soul is there, or the, essence is there. So anyway, shout out to new season of Twilight Zone. I highly recommend it. The demon expert, the theologian, is Embeth Davidtz, who we know, horror fans, as Sheila from Army of Darkness.
Yeah, I did not know that either. I've seen that a few times, but not enough to put two and two together on that one.
And it's funny, because Mark is like, what else has she been in? I'm like, Army of Darkness, Schindler's List, and this movie.
Two very similar films.
Okay. I know that though, it's literally Academy Award winning versus Army of Darkness, but guess what? I love Army of Darkness.
Yeah, we're going to go see Bruce in a couple weeks, or a week or two, right?
Yeah, and I think this is going to air after that, and we will tell you all about it, listeners. He's doing his drive-in tour across the country, so we're going to be safe, and it'll be cool. But, something about this movie that I appreciate is that there, of course, are these religious undertones and themes, because, it's demons and, it's biblical and all of that, but it doesn't get overly religious. Like some movies, when they get overly religious or like, it's all about those themes, or the church, it's just like too much. And I'm just like, okay, I'm tuning out because it's kind of boring. But this movie never went that far for me. It was like it stayed in that interesting zone.
Yeah, totally agree. They did a good job, I felt like, of introducing the concept of Azazel, or however you say it. And through him doing the research at the Evil Dead, quote-unquote, cabin where the guy killed himself in the 60s. I don't know. We probably won't even talk about that. But, yeah, it was kind of a cool, because at first you really didn't know what was happening, and then that's kind of how you found out about everything, through some stuff he found at the cabin.
Yeah, so the guy on death row gave him this riddle before he went to the death chamber, which was, why is there a space between this last name and this last name? And he didn't know what it meant, but his partners, which were Tony Soprano and John Goodman, what's his real name?
James Gandolfini.
Yeah, James Gandolfini. Through them, he was able to learn that, okay, there was this plaque for these award winners, and this guy won the award, but then he got it rescinded because he was accused of murder, which this guy ended up being Embeth Davids's father. And so, it's just like a nice plot, and it all tied together. And, this murderer was out to get him. And all of a sudden, these quote unquote copycat murders start happening, but it's not copycat because it's actually the guy.
It was cool to see how the, whatever you want to call it, the spirit could pass from person, the demon could pass from person to person so easily. So, I mean, that made it like next to impossible to ever like truly catch. And there was a lot of cool scenes where there was like, tons of people there. It was in Philadelphia. So tons of people walking down the street. And there was one like chase scene where people just kept touching, the person would touch the next person and it would just transfer to everybody while they were chasing her. And she got into a cab and this guy like punched in the window and didn't quite get to her. So I thought that was pretty cool.
It was so intense, and it's the perfect bad guy because, he ended up killing this innocent school teacher in the street. This is later in the movie, because he thought he could kill this demon. But as we already established, it can survive for one breath or 500 cubits worth of space into another living being, which, spoiler alert, we see Azazel as a cat, like looking in on Denzel in the police station. And that's how it ultimately escapes in the end.
Another point, this movie gave a lot of very small roles to actors, because like a lot of actors were Azazel for like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, a minute, whatever it would be. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yes, you don't usually see this many people get a line or two in a major motion picture. And, it didn't pay that well probably, and they were on set for a day or whatever, but it cast so many people, multiple people, who just had a short interaction with Denzel Washington or Embeth Davids briefly. And that was pretty cool. Now, I have a question for you. How did you feel about the voiceovers? I realize it really came into play in the beginning and end, and it was sort of a gut punch because you realize it's Azazel doing the voiceover from the beginning. But I don't know that I liked Denzel doing the voiceovers throughout. I feel like that could have been done with just acting instead of like telling the audience. Maybe show us instead. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I agree. I mean, really wasn't necessary. I guess at certain points it added a little context, but yeah, I agree. It was, I guess when the twist happened, I think it ended up being Azazel telling the story, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah, maybe just bookend it with that, but not throughout, because throughout just felt a little heavy-handed to me.
Agreed. It's like, do you not think I have a brain and can figure this out? Like, you need to explain it, or I don't know.
That reminds me of Martin Freeman, the actor from the British Office and Sherlock. When he would get a script for the Sherlock series, they would have a line of dialogue written for him, and he would say, no, I can just do that with a look instead of saying this line. And they would let him do that, and they often did edit it without him saying the line because, a good actor, I don't think, has to necessarily speak or have a voiceover for us in order to get the plot.
I think Martin Freeman is a rare talent where he can say 1,000 words with just moving his face a certain way. I don't know if most actors are as talented in that regard. So I feel or he can do a little noise or something, but I don't think all actors are as good as him at that.
Wow. Thank you, Mark. I agree with you, actually. And shout out to Martin Freeman. We're apparently big fans.
And he was in Fargo, so that was good.
Oh my gosh, so good that first season. He's incredible. So yes, I think Denzel. Speaking of good actors, I think Denzel is a really good actor. Do you have a favorite Denzel movie? I was thinking about that movie that we really liked, but I don't totally remember the plot now. But it's called Out of Time. Do you remember? He's based in Florida or something, and it's like a thriller or a murder mystery. I don't know.
Yeah, that was good. I think one called Man on Fire was pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Is that where Dakota Fanning was kidnapped or something?
Yeah. I think they're in Mexico or something, and he's a bodyguard. You'll have to remind me. Remember the Titans? I think he was in that.
Did you ever see Training Day?
Yeah, that was good. And didn't he win Best Actor for that? Mm-hmm. But people thought it was just giving him an award for his whole career almost, or...
Yeah, I don't know. And he was in Philadelphia, too, which was also set in Philadelphia.
Man, a lot of Philadelphia films. Was Training Day in Philadelphia? No, was that in L.A.?
I don't know where Training Day was set. I've never seen it.
What? Seriously?
Yeah, I've never seen that movie. But I know Ethan Hawke is in it, and he's his partner or something.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they just ride around in a car all day. And I think... in that one, it's the opposite. I believe Denzel is a dirty cop.
Oh.
In this one, he's not, and all his buddies are. Especially Gandolfini, I think.
Wait, was Gandolfini a dirty cop in this? I don't remember.
Well, he wasn't he wasn't doing anything super bad, but at the first scene in the movie, they're kind of talking about if they take grease or, I don't know. Cream. If they, yeah. And Denzel said he didn't. Then he said even if you do 99.5% of the time, you're doing good. And a cop, I know this isn't great for this time, but a cop does more on a daily basis than an attorney or whatever for the good of mankind. So
that's what they were saying. Yeah.
Yep.
That's not what Mark is saying.
No, that was part of the conversation of that. And then there was a thing where Denzel got Budweiser and the other guys were drinking a different kind of beer.
Heineken's and Guinness and imported stuff.
Bass. So I felt kind of sorry for them living back in the late 90s when there wasn't all these microbreweries where you could have awesome beer and those were your choices.
You say as I take a sip of Bud Light.
Hey, I mean, you've tried all the beers and you like what you like. So
I'm a simpleton, and that's fine. Let's get back to Fallen.
In the beginning of the movie, they execute the killer who Denzel arrested, and he's on death row, obviously. But when they kill him, they use the gas chamber, and I never even remember that being a method of execution.
Yes. So this is what I'm going to tell you, and listeners, this will be coming out in October, but our newest book, The Science of Stephen King, we devote a chapter to the Green Mile. And of course, a major theme that comes up in that novel is execution. And the history of public execution is fascinating and horrifying. And I had to step away from research and writing this chapter multiple times. I can't tell you how many times. It was so hard to get through because it is horrific. And I know the latest public executions or, death penalty is done by lethal injection, but even that is considered problematic. So come October, pick up a copy of this book and you will not believe what humanity has done to people throughout the ages.
Yeah, the firing squad was always an interesting one for me. Like, what, they have like 10 people and like 4 of them have bullets in their guns, but nobody really knows or something like that?
Yeah, well, you're close. Okay. Yeah, with research. No, but that's okay. But yeah, you don't actually know who had the bullet, who killed the person, and gosh, and how executioners would wear the masks to hide their face, and just there's so much icky stuff. And so speaking of the 90s, when this was set, and apparently that's how you killed people, in Pennsylvania at the time, I don't know. There was so much smoking in this movie, and I'm always surprised to see smoking now in movies just in general, but especially, something more recent. Like, I was just watching an episode of Perry Mason on HBO, and people are smoking, but, it's set in like the 40s or 50s. But this was late 90s, and people are just smoking indoors, inside like buildings at work.
Yeah, when they were smoking at the bar, it felt so like... just feels weird to see it now, even though we like lived through that. But yeah, they're just sitting in the bar drinking, smoking, where at least in Minnesota where we live, that went away like 15 years ago. Yeah,
that's true. It's funny because speaking of that, I know people vape now. I saw part of an episode of Toddlers and Tiaras where a mom was just constantly vaping because she was like nervous, but she was like vaping like in the ballroom where the pageant was happening. So, people, I guess, vape in public. I don't think you're supposed to.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to vape in public, and I also don't think you're supposed to admit watching Toddlers and Tiaras.
You know what? Here's the thing. That show, like other guilty pleasures, I go between rage and pity for my feelings. And also, I applaud the editing because it's so funny. Like, most or a lot of reality TV is fascinating because of the people that they are examining.
Yeah, I would say the best thing about reality TV is the editing. I mean, they have probably so much footage they could use, but just like little like winks and jokes and how they play the music. Perfect timing on like a little like part of the song that goes up or something like that, and like a look from somebody.
Yes, or like the clip of somebody saying something, but then they cut to the footage of them doing the opposite or whatever. Like that's good stuff.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. If it was just showing people, living their lives, it'd be really boring.
Yeah, I'm sure there's shows like that too, but I seek out the ones that make me feel something.
So another 90s thing is that they're at the first murder scene and they're taking like a bunch of Polaroids. So I thought that was telling of the times.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, I know that there's like those cameras, those instant cameras that you can print photos now, but there used to actually be, Polaroid, and that's the only way you could see a photo instantly. You couldn't see it on your phone or a digital camera. So, yeah, that was interesting.
Another 90s thing is they played the song Two Turntables and a Microphone by Beck. Might be called Where It's At, I don't know. At the cheesesteak stand when the demon kept passing from person to person. So.
Oh, yes. And so shout out to my visit to Philly in January. We walked by the 2 most famous cheesesteak stands, and they are literally across the street from each other. And there were lines at both. Like, every time I walked by or drove by, there were lines at both places. So it's legit.
Yeah, cheesesteaks are delicious. Like, so good. I'm just very thankful for them.
Something that I appreciate about that demon passing from person to person is that they truly let us know who it's in, or at least, that it's present, because they do this POV cam from the demon's perspective, and everything's just a little bit off. Like, it's exaggerated and the colors are different. And so we know, okay, the demon's around. Most of the time we know whose body it's in. Sometimes we don't, though. And that's good for building that suspense and tension.
I agree 100%. Yeah. And there was like but sometimes they didn't let the audience know where it was or who it was in. So that led like to this sense of like paranoia, because he lives with his brother who has a, I don't know, 8-year-old son or something. And at one point he comes home from work and like the 8-year-old's outside with his friend, and kind of get the impression that maybe one of them is the demon at that point, but so you're just kind of paranoid about it. So,
but it could also be the dad, his brother.
It could also be his brother. It could also be none of them too. So I mean, I thought that was a interesting choice of when to use the POV cam and when not to.
Yes, that's true. And that's why also this demon is so terrifying, because it literally could be anyone. And no matter what you do, you can't get away from it, because like that chase scene that we mentioned with the just touching someone, it can move so quickly from person to person. Like I really appreciated when it got into, via the cat, the police station, and it was his coworkers, and they were singing that Rolling Stones song, Time Is On Your Side, Is On My Side. And it was jumping from person to person that he trusted. And then it was just in these randoms on the street, multiple randoms, and we just didn't even know what to do with it. And neither did Denzel. Like that was really powerful and creepy. Like, guess what? You have zero power in this situation.
And that was another cool scene, because like you just said, the Time Is On My Side song that the guy on death row was singing, it became like this theme throughout the movie of like someone's whistling that song, or like whoever has the demon in them is doing that. So that cat gets into the police station and gets the Gandolfini character, so he's singing that song, and then he touches somebody else and they start singing it, and Denzel's just sitting there like, oh god, like he knows. So
yeah, very powerful. I liked how when he goes up to that cabin, like you were saying, it's M. Beth Davis's dad, or their family cabin, but the dad is where he went to try to defeat Azazel. He is up there, and it kind of reminds me of the Evil Dead cabin in a way, especially that basement. It's so icky, and like the basement kind of starts even caving in on him at one point, and he finds these demonology books, and we find out that M. Beth Davis is a demon hunter, and I think that's pretty effing cool. Like, we don't ever actually see any other demon hunters, and we don't see her defeat a demon. We see Denzel trying to, but yeah, spoiler alert, he doesn't.
You could kind of sense the end of the movie, like what he was trying to do. He's trying to lure the Azazel out into the middle of nowhere, where he would end up killing it, and then he would kill himself so he had no host to go to. But unfortunately there was a cat within 500 whatevers of it, cubits. So, but
really, yeah, it could have been any living being. So even a cabin in the wilderness isn't great, because there's like birds, and I'm sure there's like bugs or worms or whatever. Ugh.
So yeah, Azazel's still out there somewhere. I have no idea where, but
yikes. Mark, what if I started speaking Syrian Aramaic right now? Would you freak out?
I think that'd be pretty cool.
Just kidding. No, but yeah, I mean, it's so creepy, and that's why it's a great premise. And like I said, even though it's like super religious in theme or premise, it never went to that place where I was bored.
It was more about the evil side, I thought, than like the good side, if you want to call it that. So yeah, they asked Denzel if he ever goes to church, and he's like, "Yeah, I've been a few times," or something like that. Or if he believes in God, he's like, "I go to church sometimes." So
yeah, and Beth was like, "Okay, well, good luck." When his brother is killed, so the modus operandi of this killer, Reese, was he would inject his victims with this poison, And then we see that he keeps leaving these bodies in the bathtub, and he's like writing stuff or carving stuff into their chests. And it's super horrific. And the demon ends up killing his brother with that poison. And of course, just like Embeth Davids' father, he is being framed for these murders. And so it is so tragic when his brother is killed. It's really sad because his brother is like a little bit simple or something. Like he's just not all together there. And the nephew is still alive, but Denzel knows he's got to try to save his nephew now. He brings him to Embeth Davids and, just basically says, take care of him. There's this unspoken connection that they have. And I don't know if it's romantic or platonic or whatnot. They don't ever kiss or anything like that, but they have this connection. I thought that was really nice because I feel like a lot of, cheesy horror movies would be like, okay, let's have an unnecessary sex scene and show her boobs.
I was really waiting for that unnecessary sex scene. Unfortunately, it never came. If you buy the extended version, maybe.
Stop.
I'm kidding. Yeah, I agree. They definitely had a connection. I had another thought, and I can't remember what it was now.
What I was going to say, too, is that that was really well set up. And then he goes up to this cabin, and he doesn't know who Azazel's going to show up in. And then Donald Sutherland pulls up, which is his chief. And he thinks, okay, this is it. But then John Goodman's there also. So literally, he's got to kill either or both his boss and his best friend. And that is so sad. It's such a good moral quandary to be in.
Yeah, and that was another scene where they didn't use the point of view thing, so you didn't know which one of those two was, and they were both kind of acting weird. I don't know, how much did Donald Sutherland know about what was going on? Because in the beginning of the movie, Denzel was asking about that guy who killed himself, and he's just like, let it go, don't... if you find out anything, don't say anything to me or something. So I feel like he knew stuff because he'd been there for so long, but I didn't know if he's like in on it or what was going on.
I don't think he was in on it, but I think he knew that guy was not respected anymore because he was accused of those murders. And so, let it go because that's been sealed because we don't want to bring it up anymore. But then, of course, it ends up being inside John Goodman, and John Goodman does his best Mick Jagger impersonation, and he ends up shooting the chief, Donald Sutherland, or Lieutenant. I don't know what his title was. Lieutenant. And, that was really shocking. And so Denzel ends up shooting John Goodman and is smoking the poison lace cigarette to try to, not allow him to enter anybody. But of course he enters a cat. Yeah,
definitely. So yeah, I just felt like Denzel was in this ultimate no-win situation where he knew, he kind of started figuring out what was going on, but then the demon was fighting against him. He ended up shooting. He had to shoot the school teacher because the demon got inside the school teacher with a gun, and Denzel thought if he killed him, it would kill the thing, but it didn't. So then he got basically fired, and it just looked real bad for him. The whole city was looking for him at one point. He had to sneak out of his house when the cops or his partners were coming to get him. He had to punch a cop in the face at a subway station. So yeah, he was in a bad spot.
It was a bad situation. And especially what upped the ante on that was that he had his young, sweet, innocent nephew with him, and his young, sweet, innocent brother had just been murdered, and they were going to accuse him of the murder. And so, he told his nephew before he left, he's like, whatever you hear about me, whatever you hear that I did or said, I'm doing it for you. And so I would like to believe that Embeth Davids raised that child, and he became a cop who solves murders, and she ended up killing Azazel ultimately because she is a demon hunter.
So what was the significance of the apocalypse thing? Because he wrote all those letters on everyone's chest, and if you put them all together, it said apocalypse. Because then he asked the nun, what it meant, and it was like Revelations 18:2 or something, or something like that. But what?
Yeah, it was the Bible verse, but I can't remember exactly what the Bible verse said. But it was basically just that, the demons were going to roam the earth.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I don't know why Azazel was so obsessed with Denzel, except for the fact that he was the cop or the person or the being that, caught him. And apparently, he hadn't been caught for a long time because, the little clue, I mean, I don't remember how much he revealed, but a little clue, the end credit sequence song is Sympathy for the Devil, also from the Rolling Stones. And, that song talks about how I was at the crucifixion of Christ and I was at all of these important things throughout history. And do you know who I am? You probably know my name. And it was the devil. And so, I mean, I know that this is a demon, but he's probably been around for a long time and no one ever caught him like Denzel did. So that's probably why he was obsessed with him. And also, remember, he tried to enter him and he couldn't. So why? Like, there's more of a backstory there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to nitpick the movie, but it just seems like he could have just easily passed this thing on to some other guard or police officer or something and just moved on with his life instead of sitting in prison, whatever. I'm sorry.
No, I know. And I know what you're saying. But at the same time, like, if he's literally been around for millennia, for 10,000 years because he's a demon, then 15 years or 10 years or 5 years or whatever he was on death row is nothing if he can play a little game with this guy who caught him. And that's probably more fun to him than, I'll pass it on and I'll be out. Like, who cares?
That's true.
We have to see it from Azazel's point of view, okay?
I don't know. I just felt like he could have gotten into someone else and then gone straight after him, but that's just how I would have done it if I was Azazel. So, I mean...
Well, you're not a demon, so...
So, yeah. I mean, Azazel's, more patient than me, so...
Mark, should we rank this movie?
I had one more quick thing to say is that the killer in the beginning reminded me of Robert De Niro in Cape Fear.
Oh, yeah. And also he's going after the person who put him away.
Oh, same movie. Kind of. Very similar movie, and they have a standoff at the end. Although in Cape Fear, spoiler alert.
We already talked about it on the podcast, but yes.
But if someone didn't listen to that one, Nick Nolte wins. And Nick Nolte isn't in this movie, so there's no way he could have won.
Oh, yeah. Okay, There you go. Listen, let's rank this movie on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being you hated it, 10 being you think it's a perfect movie. We need a scale. What is the scale that Azazel would want us? I mean, is it Cats? Is it the time is on my side?
I was thinking maybe a Budweiser beers.
Oh, let's do Budweiser.
Because they keep talking about Budweiser and... No, that was Coke or Diet Coke at one point. Coke must have sponsored it because at one point in the movie, there's this huge Coke machine in the background. You could see all... And then one of the...
Denzel buys
Sutherland. Yeah, and they were sitting there and they were holding it perfect with the logo facing out.
Logo facing out like Bo Burnham, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to go with that or...
Budweiser or Coke?
I like Budweiser because they really drove the point home that we have to switch to Budweiser.
Okay, how many Budweisers do you give Fallen?
I'm going to give it 7 Budweisers. I thought it was a good concept. Thought it was well executed. Kept the audience guessing a little bit and also showed the point of view so you kind of knew what was going on. Thought Denzel did a good job. I thought, a good strong cast. Maybe that's why the movie lost money because they had to pay all these kind of big time actors. Although I don't think Gandolfini was as big at that time.
Didn't The Sopranos start by 98? Look it up, Mark. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's true. But okay, I also I'm going to give it a 7. And if we were going by Rotten Tomatoes, it would be like a 4 or whatever. I think it's better than they're giving it credit for. I think it is solid. I think it's a great premise. Like I said, a lot of times with these overtly religious themes, I kind of tune out or get bored by it, but it never felt that way to me. It was always really interesting. The only thing I wish is that I wish we could have seen Annabeth Davids in a flashback or a flash forward or even in a current scene be the demon hunter that she was born to be and like actually see her kill some demons, because that would have been badass. But, you know, whatever. Okay, when was The Sopranos out?
1999.
Oh, this was right before his Sopranos fame.
Yep. And he had a mustache. I wasn't a huge fan of the mustache, but he had a mustache.
In this movie, yeah.
Yep.
So, okay. If you haven't checked out Fallen, if you haven't watched it, it's on Hulu right now for free. And I wasn't mad about it. Like, I did see it. I saw it more than once back in the day. And it actually surpassed my expectations / memories of it. Like, I think it holds up. Mark, what do you think?
I definitely enjoyed it. I would recommend it, even though we've talked about the whole movie already, if you listen to this. But yeah, definitely it's worth your time.
Or a rewatch.
Yeah. Denzel to, reminisce about those actors back in the day. I think the lady from NYPD Blue was in it too, like the lady who worked in the office. So it's another reason to watch it.
There you go.
Hey y'all, it's me here to talk about books, of course. So I read a really good, what I would describe as a summer read. And what I'm about to describe may sound like I'm kind of dissing this book, but let me explain. So I read The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. I don't think I've ever talked about Ruth Ware on our new book segment here on Horror Rewind, but this is my third book I've read of hers. Starting with In a Dark, Dark Wood, I've also read Woman in Cabin 10. So, where to begin? I enjoyed In a Dark, Dark Wood when I read it a couple years ago. It was just very much a classic suspense novel. She does not write supernatural. It is very much your sort of classic. I'm going to use the word classic a lot. She's British, so they take place in England, and they're contemporary, but they don't necessarily always feel contemporary. And I think that is the appeal of Ruth Ware. So Woman in Cabin 10, I have seen got a little bit of flack. I think it was a little bit unbelievable sometimes, and maybe not her most well-crafted novel. Ruth Ware is what I would describe as like an Agatha Christie. And I noticed on the back of Death of Mrs. Westaway that this is becoming like a trend, because I keep noticing this on books, is that it's comparing her work to Rebecca, which is my favorite novel. And that's not true. I would not compare it to Rebecca, because Rebecca is really... part of it is luxuriating in the sumptuous words by Daphne du Maurier. And while Ruth Ware is a great writer, she just doesn't have that sort of high language and wonderful vocabulary. And that's okay. She's not here for like heavy metaphor. She is here for your Agatha Christie sort of feel. And it's kind of nice because it is contemporary. So her characters can be a little more different. And this is actually in The Death of Mrs. Westaway. The character of Hal, or Harriet, she is my favorite Ruth Ware character so far. She is sort of a little gender ambiguous. She is a tarot card reader, which was really fun actually. And it kind of got me interested in tarot card reading. I don't believe that, and I know a lot of you do, which is totally cool. And maybe I do kind of believe a little bit. Maybe that's why I'm intrigued, but I don't necessarily think it can tell your fortune, but I kind of like the idea of it as sort of a therapy tool, which is kind of what she talks about in the novel, where it's like using tarot to kind of expose things to yourself that you need to know, that you sort of already know, but you need it unearthed. And so there are these really interesting concepts that she talks about, but at the end of the day, her novels are not surprising. And I know that sounds like I'm dissing it, and I have this sort of maybe I sound pretentious, but it's not that way at all. It's not the kind of novel where you're going to be surprised and shocked the whole way through, but that's okay because it's the comfort food that you want. It is, the old Victorian home that's crumbling and whispers behind closed doors and, characters who you can't quite tell if they're good or evil. And sometimes some of the things they say, the quotes they say, I mean, they're very cliche, but that's okay. That's why romance is a popular genre, because people want that happy ending. And I knew reading this novel I was going to get my happy ending, that Harriet or Hal was going to prevail and figure out the mystery of, who her mother is, who her father is, the secrets that have gone on in this house in Penzance, England. So, I mean, I got everything I wanted. I had the mystery and suspense. I had the female-driven aspect of it. I got a dead body. Like, I got all the stuff that I wanted. And yes, I would very much, if you like Agatha Christie, you kind of like that vein of writing, then this is definitely a book for you, and so are her other ones. I'm gonna buy more. She had one that came out last year that I haven't read yet, and I'm gonna buy it knowing full well what I'm getting myself into, and there's nothing wrong with that. So it was kind of a nice respite from Books of Blood, because Books of Blood is all about surprising you and being gruesome, and it's all about allegory and metaphor and sex and blood, and so it was kind of a nice little transition to sort of sit out on my deck and read The Death of Mrs. Westaway. I would recommend it to anyone who maybe in this time of watching the numbers rise right now in summertime of COVID cases. It is a nice little getaway, and it feels safe in its nice, harmonious suspense with the scary maid who lives in the house. Maybe that's why they were comparing it to Rebecca. It's that evil Mrs. Warren in the novel. She definitely has a vibe of Mrs. Danvers. In fact, I think that reference is made in the novel. So that is probably definitely a similarity you could point out. But after my pretentious talk about how it's not like full literature, that is no way means that I think you shouldn't read it. I think you should read The Death of Mrs. Westaway and be whisked away to, you can go to Brighton in England, and you get to be on the what do you call it? Not dock, but like where they do the tarot card reading, like where all the tourists go. And so that was a really fun part. And then you get to go to, the classic old house that's crumbling in rural England, which is like, I don't know, one of my favorite settings, if not my very favorite setting of all time. I mean, I just love it. So anyway, I am so happy I read this novel. It was just sort of the perfect time. I laid out yesterday outside and read it for like 3 hours on a Sunday, and it was just glorious. So I hope that you're reading something really good, whether it's horror or not, and definitely tweet me or send me a message on Facebook and let me know some books that I should be reading and reviewing. You know what I like. And I will be probably back with my next installment about the second Books of Blood. So back into the fire. Okay, I will see you guys in the horror book section. Bye.
Well, until next time, Rewinders, we will see you scrolling through the horror section.
Bye.